What's up, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG video where I'm joined by three very special guests to talk about the upcoming World Championships here in Nashville coming up in just a couple weeks, right around the corner. It kind of snuck up on us, I feel like, but I'm going to let these guys go around, introduce themselves. They're going to tell us their names, where they're from, and their favorite deck that they played this season. So we'll go Alex, then Kian, then Mikey. So go ahead, Alex.
Hello, I'm Alex Hill. I'm from Michigan, but I live in Georgia now. And Chip posed this question, and I'm like, what's my favorite deck that I played this year? And I think it's probably Glacian Barbarical. That's the only time that I really brought a secret deck to any event, and I definitely felt the most invincible at that tournament of anything. The meta was just a lot of Zoroarks, and I kind of just grinded them out and put them in a little prison lock.
Nice and degenerate. Glacian, awesome. All right, Kian.
Hey, my name's Kian Amini, and I'm from San Jose. And my favorite deck this season was probably Expanded Zoroark. Because every Expanded Regional I went to, I just played it, and it just felt like, wow, this deck is super broken. But yeah, that was pretty much my favorite deck of the season.
Yeah. Seems like it was pretty broken since they banned all the cards that made it good. So.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy they did.
Yeah.
I started to hate Expanded.
And Mike?
Yeah, my name is Mike Fouché. I'm from the Northeast. Grew up in New York, lived in Philly. Now I'm down in Baltimore. I definitely really liked Gardevoir this year. I played it at a lot of different tournaments. But besides Gardevoir, I played Shocklock in Dallas, and it was my worst tournament of the year, but it was probably the most fun that I had.
Nice.
What did you end up in Dallas?
4-2-3, I think. I played against Noivern Garb.
And that was where Ross and JP both got top 16 with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was actually pretty good.
Yeah, probably the best tournament of the year for Shocklock.
Yeah.
Cool deal. All right, well, thanks for taking your time out of your evenings, guys, to sit down and do this video. For those of you watching, what we're going to do here is we're going to talk just kind of about the World's format. It's a little different than something like your standard regionals, since we have, the day 1, day 2. We've got the players that are already automatically in day 2, and then, obviously they want to bring a lot of players over from day 1 to day 2. So we'll talk about that just a little bit, and kind of the differences between preparing for day 1 and preparing for day 2 of the tournament, between what deck you choose, how your testing looks, things like that. So and this is also kind of a unique group for this type of discussion as well, because as long as we've had the 2-day format since 2014 or 2015, is that right? Is it 2014?
15, yeah.
2015. So Mikey, I believe, is the only player to have made it through all 3 now day 1s into day 2. And Alex and Kian have both played had the auto invite to day 2, and now this year are going to be playing in day 1. So there's kind of a dynamic of how you want to prepare for the tournament. So why don't we start with Mike? Just how is this format just a little bit different from that of regionals?
So even though, especially this year, we've seen regional cuts, pretty much you have to go 7-2. So ties are really bad at regionals this year, but that hasn't always historically been the case. And even at some regionals this year, 6-1-2 or 6-2-1 even would make it. But really at Worlds, ties are really bad because you have to go X2, that's the rule to make it through. So if you tie, you either it's quite literally a loss, or you have to get 3 ties to make up for it, and 0 losses then. So one of the years I actually made it through at XO3.
Yeah, wasn't that 16?
Yeah, when there was 8 rounds.
With Pram?
Yeah, me and Pram in the last round. Yeah. So ties are really bad, so that's kind of that's probably the biggest thing. So if you can play a deck that is either very high percentage going to finish 3 games, something like Rayquaza, that's really good, or something that you can pretty reliably finish 1 game and maybe not have the second game finish. So I think in this format that would be something like Zoroark Macargo, where you might play a really long game 1 and then game 2 won't finish. I would say that's kind of the biggest difference. The other difference is just the average quality of people that you're going to be playing against is a little bit higher than any other tournament that you've played this year.
Sure. Yeah, obviously with this being the World Championships, it's all people who had to qualify in some way to be there. And even though this will be the largest Worlds that we've ever had, there's still, had to get to 500 points or 400 points this year. So it's just so many points and, the best in the world. So Kian and Alex, I want to ask you guys kind of about the difference between what your preparations have been in the past when you knew you didn't have to play day one, whereas now you have to play in day one. So what are your Alex, why don't you start us off with like how you prepare differently for day one and day two?
I actually went through day one on 15 and 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of done both. For my testing group we haven't really prepared too differently. And then we've also just kept to the same deck both days, most of the time. In 15 and 16, we played Trevenant in 15, changed one card. Played Greninja in 16, also changed one card into day two. Last year, we sent everybody with Gardevoir into day one. And then kind of after seeing the metagame a little bit more, and then having more time to test, I switched to Espeon because Gardevoir didn't go so well on day one.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot of people kind of saying like, oh, if you have like a secret deck, hold it for day two or something. But yeah, and I'm Mikey's shaking his head. And I think the funniest thing about that too is I think Mikey's testing group is probably the one that would be known for having like the secret deck more than a lot of the other groups in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is too important just to make it to day two. And then the metagame is just going to shift anyways. So I mostly just think about it just like any other tournament.
Sure.
Yeah. Let me just hit on that point. Yeah. Do not save a deck for day two. Like that's really silly. Even if like one of your buddies is like auto day two, if they're really your buddy, they're not gonna like make you not play it. Like 2 years ago, I played the Vespiquen Yveltal Octillery deck that Ross ended up getting top 4 with, and Ross was auto day two, but like me, Sam, Tyler, JP, and like one or two other people were all played day one, and we all played the deck. We're like, do you mind if we play this, Ross? He's like, yeah, play it. And I ended up being the only one to make it from day one to day two. So that's the other thing. Like, even if you have a really good deck and it ends up doing well at Worlds, like the more people that play it, the more likely that one of them's actually going to make it through.
Sure.
It's not guaranteed. There's variance in Pokemon and whatnot.
Yeah, so much more to it than just the deck you play. It's the matchups you hit and how your draws are and all those things like that. Kian, what has your experience been? Has it been any different for than Alex's was as far as preparing for day one versus preparing for day two?
Yeah, so this is my first time playing day one. And I've been basically preparing the same. I still in the summer I have a lot more time. And I try to test every deck. Now I've been doing a new thing where I just stop because I know Buzzrock and Zorgarp. I know how to play those decks, so I just don't test those decks anymore unless I'm playing against them. So I've been trying a lot of new decks like Magnezone and like this new other decks. And yeah, but usually the past 3 years I have this tendency to play a safe deck. Like the last 3 years I played Toadbats 2015, Night March 16, Trampigarp 2017. Those are really just safe decks. I did well, but I usually tend to play safe decks, but I think this year I kind of want to do it a little bit different. And I don't really want to play Zark because, as you guys said, it just has to give you a high tie deck, and I'm not sure about that. I'm still preparing, but it's generally the same. I can't scope out day one and feel it out like I did the previous years. But I have to pick my deck before I leave for the tournament, which is a bit weird. But I think I'll be prepared enough because I've been practicing.
Oh yeah. I forgot we actually have to do deck lists on Thursday night.
That's right. Yeah.
They just added that last year. Ugh.
Yeah. So I have to I probably have to decide my deck right when I get there and just not Yeah.
So you brought up an interesting point as well, Kian, about playing a safe deck versus playing maybe something that could be a little more risky. And I think a lot of people when it comes to needing to get points for the end of the year and stuff like that, you hear a lot of people defaulting to safer choices as opposed to playing something that might be a little more rogue but could be just a little more sketchy as far as just the deck's general power / consistency, anything like that. But then we're here at the World Championships. it's kind of like this is it, right? There's nothing else to play for besides this tournament. So is this kind of, do you see a lot of people at this time of year just kind of going all out and playing kind of more wacky, less known stuff? I guess Mikey can talk about this, since his teammate Ross is kind of known for playing the hidden secret deck or whatever before Worlds.
I do think it happens more at Worlds than probably any other tournament. Even like twists on established decks, I think is like a pretty big thing that happens. Like last year, a bunch of the EU guys played Decidueye Vileplume with like 4 Ace Arola. And so I think people are more likely to make those kind of drastic things.
Like deviations from standard lists,
Yeah.
Right. Exactly, I agree. Yeah.
I have something to add on from like for the past 3 years, like you've been seeing rogue decks and kind of like high roll decks just winning Worlds, because like these medium decks like Zark, like it's very hard to outplay Mirror in day 2. It's like going to come down to like a bunch of stuff. Like you saw 2015 Archie Stoy Swan. This is like a very high roll deck. 2016 you saw like Ross's deck. Greninja was a high roll deck and shit rogue deck. And last year you saw Diego. High roll Gardevoir, and then second was Golospot Guard, which was like a rogue deck, but just only like the Japanese players knew about it. Like I think the Worlds, like you need to play like some like to win the tournament. Like you could do well, like, but to win Worlds, like or like just do super well, like definitely like a rogue or a high roll deck like can get you there. Because I know in day 2, like you can't outplay. Like it's just gonna come down to luck, and you just need some sort of edge. Like the past 3 years, I played safe decks, but like it's very like for me, like I found out like okay, I can't. It's very hard for me to win these tournaments if I'm just playing these safe decks that I can't really have no edge. Like I got like top 16, top 32, but like I know like it's like I'm just decreasing my chances of winning the tournament. I know I could just do well, but I found out like I think this philosophy is sort of correct.
Sure.
In my opinion, so it's like you can't like you need some sort of edge right now, or you need a high roll deck to like and it's your weekend, right?
But if you think 3 years past that, you go to Verzian Genesect winning Worlds, Darkrai winning Worlds, and then Darkrai Mewtwo winning Worlds, like 3 just super consistent decks winning.
I think, but that's like that. That's when the format. That's when the structure changed too, though.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that like 2014, 230 person Worlds is significantly like easier than any of like the 128 day 2 Worlds we've had in the last couple of years.
That was a bit different too, though, because like Pyro was like on it won nationals.
It's a different story. But, like each World has its own metagame and the stories of what different countries and testing groups bring. But I don't necessarily think that like a consistent deck can't or is a bad play for Worlds.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've been on that like the past 3 years. I noticed that like you play something like a high roll deck, a rogue deck, you could have a good chance to surprise people or just run hard.
And I think to kind of extend that point over to day 1, especially for a lot of the newer players that have kind of maybe gotten their invite for the first time, it's not necessarily a bad idea to play something that has a little bit more polarized matchups. If you feel like, you're into Worlds for the first time, you're still not 100% confident in your abilities maybe to like outplay some of the other Worlds players. Like it's okay to play a deck that gives you like a 70-30 matchup and against some things and a 30-70 matchup against other things, and just kind of try and hit matchups rather than trying to outplay your opponent every single round. I probably wouldn't recommend that to everyone, but I would not fault anyone for having that strategy.
Sure.
See, well, the thing I would add to that is just don't play some rogue or like high roll deck just for the sake of playing it.
Right.
I mean, we've seen multiple people playing Almastar, Break, Aerodactyl in past years and going like double 0-3 drop. I feel like we see like some just or like I don't know, Rahul played Vespiquen last year and complained that he got all these counters and stuff. I'm just like, I don't know.
I told Mark this because Mark in 2015 he played Dragon Rayquaza. Then in 2016 he played Toad Greninja. Then last year he played a real deck. He played Gardevoir and made day 2. I was made fun of him. Just stop play a real deck.
I mean, play whatever the testing results are giving you.
I mean, but you see sign.
Yeah, and it's always interesting too to see the road decks that come out at Worlds. Like last year, Kian talked about Gliscopod Garbodor, a deck that wasn't really on anyone's radar heading into the tournament. The majority of the Japanese players played it, and we saw 2 in the top 4. One obviously got second place, and then that became a really strong deck at the beginning of our next standard format. Same thing goes for Ho-Oh Kiawe, which got 9th place at Worlds last year, became a pretty solid meta deck for the beginning of last season as well. So it'll be interesting to kind of see. I guess that's something we could speak to a little bit. How much do you think the Worlds meta, since there will be a decent amount of people watching this who might not be going to Worlds, might be preparing for post rotation, and then everyone who is going to Worlds will probably also be playing in post rotation as well. So how you guys have more experience with this than me. How has the past year's Worlds affected the next rotations metagame? Whoever wants to jump in on this.
I'll start. I think a pretty decent amount, at least for, was last year the last 2 years we've had the new set, right, for Worlds, right?
That's right.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It was Steam Siege for 2016 and then Burning Shadows last year.
Yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with it of recent years, because this is the first tournament with this new set being legal, and so there's no like real blueprint going into this tournament necessarily, and so we're not going to know all the different combinations of cards until after the fact, and so that'll inform the next format. We saw that last year, kind of like as you said, and we saw it the year before, even with like Volcanion. Kind of the Japanese players brought Volcanion, and that kind of was a thing afterward. Even 3 years ago when Jacob Wagner won with Archie's Blastoise, then that became a relevant deck the year after. So I think it affects it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Alex or Kian?
Last year was like when we went from the Worlds format to the new rotation format. We only lost like VS Seeker, I think. We still saw Goldspot, Garbodor, and Gardevoir. They were still the same decks, but they didn't have VS Seeker and Hex Maniac. I mean, depends on years. Like, there's rotations are different, but I think this rotation is a very a significant rotation that a lot of decks are just going to change because there's Buzzrock loses to support, Zoroark loses puzzles. I don't know if we'll see the same Worlds deck carry over this year, because a lot of stuff rotated, and Expanded also got some ban lists, we can't play puzzles. I don't know, maybe there's an idea that could come from this Worlds format to the Expanded or Standard, but I think this year's a bit harder to carry over. I think last year was super easy to carry over because we only lost we didn't lose that many cards.
Sure, no, it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Kian. Yeah, I think some sort of road decks will show up, and they'll just be used as the blueprint for building those in the future.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, go ahead.
Yeah, because this year's Sun and Moon rotations is going to change the format a lot compared to last year's rotation.
Yeah.
Oh, Sycamore. It's crazy.
First
Thank
time
God.
in 7 years there hasn't been a discard draw 7 card in the standard format or
Thank
something like that.
goodness.
So
that
8
card
years
is
maybe.
busted.
I don't know.
I miss N though.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. But before we jump into the meta discussion of Worlds, we're going to talk now about the more popular decks we expect to see. Maybe some rogue decks that have popped up here and there online in the ARG tournament this past weekend. But before we do that, is there anything else you guys want to talk about in relation to Worlds that's not related to the meta specifically? Any other final thoughts that you'd want to tell maybe a first-time Worlds player coming up this year? If not, that's fine.
Since we have to hand in our deck list, since we have to hand in our deck list on Thursday, I'd obviously you're going to do a little testing once you get there, but have a pretty good idea of what you're going to be playing. If you get in Wednesday or Thursday morning or something like that. I actually don't fly in until Thursday at 4:30, so I need to pretty much have my deck decided, or at least have 2 options. Because I'm just barely going to make registration, but I would really recommend that for anyone to really just have a pretty solid idea of what they're going to play even before they get there.
Definitely.
The thing I would probably add is just, especially playing Day 1 Worlds, don't get discouraged. I mean, your resistance doesn't matter for anything. It's just getting 6 of 8 wins or 7 of 9 maybe this year. But also, I mean, the person you're going to play at 0-1 is going to be probably way better than anybody you've ever played at 0-1.
Yeah.
It's Worlds. It's going to be hard.
Sure.
But just enjoy it. Not the end of the world. I mean, you already made it to Worlds. You get the swag bag no matter what. So.
Yeah, and as someone last year, it was I played in my first World Championships last year, and things didn't super go my way day one. I didn't make it to day 2. I was, kind of upset about it. Some things didn't go my way. Maybe I could have played a little better in certain instances, but even after I took my 3rd loss and was eliminated from day 2, I still played my last round because I was like, this is the World Championships, right? Like, I made it here. This is my first time. This is like the only time I'll get to play every round my first time at the World Championships. So I don't know, just enjoy it. And, you've worked hard the whole year to get to this point. So just, now's the payoff. So there you go.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, cool. So now we get to talk about some decks now with the Breakthrough through Celestial Storm format. So I'll just ask, before we kind of talk about any specific decks, just looking at Celestial Storm, what would you guys say are some of the big impacts that you expect that set in general to have on the format? Like specific cards, specific shifts in the meta, things like that. We can start with Kian for this one.
I think it's pretty obvious that the Rayquaza Latias combo, it's like just a new archetype now.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a solid deck for Worlds. And Macargo, obviously, because it enhances Towards Deck. Like, it's basically like a newer version of Towards Deck with that card. What else is in this set? I don't remember. I've been testing the new cards. Those are the only new cards I've been using.
Sure. The Shrine of Punishments, we were talking about that a little
Shrine,
bit
earlier. Yeah, it's not like Burning Shadows last year where it just changed the game a little. I don't know. That's the thing. I've just been trying those 2 types of decks, like Macargo and the Ray. But someone in this conversation could probably add on a lot more cards.
Yeah, the only other major card that I think really comes in the set, at least for Worlds, is the Shrine, like you said, Chip. And I don't even think that card is that great. I don't think Spread is very good in general, but I think it might be a good card in something else that's not Spread. I'm not really too sure. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit when we're talking about specific decks. I don't know, Alex, any other okay cards in the set?
Honestly, no. It's interesting. Kian mentioned, with Burning Shadows, there's this huge change because we got Guzma, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you just swapped out the Lysanders, and you could just you could build decks a little bit differently, knowing that you get to switch off all the Guzmas. Here, I think it's more so just we have Rayquaza, and then some decks kind of get a little bit of an upgrade. One of the things that I found, I think Magcargo is probably the biggest addition to the format, and will be in the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the first thing that I learned testing this format, I think, was that Buzzgarb is basically unplayable, because I think the Magcargo getting you the Guzma to kill the Trubbish after they kill the first Garbodor just is the nail in the coffin in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I haven't played very much with Zoroark Magcargo because I don't really like Zoroark, and I also don't really like that kind of like a lock control deck. I start off the whole conversation saying Glacian Barbarical is my favorite, but is there not really my style. So I'm sure Magcargo also has more impacts. I think that's been the most impactful card for me.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will say so there's a couple other decent cards that they're almost, in my mind, they're almost like trap cards where they look kind of good, but I don't think they're actually good. So the 2 that come to mind mostly are Banette GX, which is a in a vacuum, it's a very good card actually, but I just don't think it's great right now. It's it's unplayable against any Zoroark deck. So whatever you pair it with has to beat Zoroark. And you can't build half a deck and beat Zoroark. That's really not how Zoroark functions. And then the other card is Copycat. I think a lot of people have been trying it out as a supporter instead of Cynthia or N. In theory, it's good against Zoroark because you draw they trade and you get a big hand. But in reality, most of the time when that happens, you just want to be using N.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're not getting 7+ cards, you're usually getting 4, and that sucks. You just almost always rather be playing Cynthia than Copycat against any other deck except Zoroark. So I really have not been impressed with Copycat in testing.
Yeah, I think worth mentioning as well is the formats Well, I guess, I don't know, in Heart Gold Soul Silver era, where Copycat was legal, we also had Professor Oak's New Theory, which was, the same as Cynthia. But, like, in the previous formats where Copycat was legal, that was, like, literally the only, like, shuffle draw option, really, that existed. So I think that, people might be using their nostalgia goggles and saying, like, oh, this card was so good back then. So every deck played so many of them, but it's just, like, the game is so different now.
And even back then, there was kind of like a micro game within the game of trying to, like, so you had Copycat and Steve's advice,
right?
And so you were trying to, like, keep your own hand size small, keep your bench small to, like, limit your opponent's draw options. And if Copycat ever becomes good enough that it's included, it's just like, if it becomes good, that's going to make it worse because people are going to play around it as much as they can,
Sure.
Yeah, the other problems, like, there's Treasure and Ultra Ball, and there's, like, so much ways to play your card hand down now. Like, back then, like, you couldn't really thin down your hand as much.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, cool. So we will just kind of hop in here and talk about kind of the expected meta, the expected decks to be big at the tournament. I think the biggest one, the one that's had the most discussion, I think by far online leading up to this tournament, has been the Zoroark Mag Cargo deck. Tord got second with this Zoroark Disruption deck at NAIC, so we've seen that, it's a deck that can perform well at the highest level. And then Mag Cargo, like we mentioned, is just like such a natural partner for that type of deck. Lets you get any one of your disruption pieces at any time. And then this past weekend, we saw it actually win the ARG tournament that was held in this format. So we'll just kind of pop around the circle real fast, let everyone give their thoughts on Zoroark Mag Cargo, just as a deck, and then also for the Worlds format. We can start with Alex, Kian, then Mike.
I don't really like the deck. It's just not really my style. I don't like grinding people out like that. And it's kind of funny. Kind of the difference between this and Glaceon is how much you have to think. Like if it's hard and you have to pick the cards you get back, I don't really want to deal with it. But I think it's the number one deck to prepare for right now. I would have said that before ARG. But yeah, after ARG and after I think Isaiah's list was very good. Mm-hmm. Now that there's a like really good list of the new way to build it, I think it's going to be just even more popular at Worlds. As far as playing it, it's probably fine. I do think you're probably looking at winning one game if you're going to play this deck. So don't be like so some of my friends from Nats this year and play all your games untimed. If you're going to play Zoroark Mag Cargo, you should be playing timed testing games, I think.
Sure. Yeah. Kian, thoughts on Zoroark Mag Cargo?
Yeah, like just Alex said, it's just like a very good deck. Obviously broken. You search for a card and smooth trading. That's how you call it, I guess. Like for me, like I'm kind of leaning towards not playing it. Like I don't know, like. I think I could play day one, just like during day two. It's like I just don't like the tie thing, and I don't know if I can. Oh, the deck also takes a lot of mental energy. It's a very, very skill intensive deck, and I've been like testing the deck, and like wow, you can make like you can easily make a mistake no matter how good you are. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
crazy how how Tord just won because that deck was super hard to play. It's crazy how good his skill is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy when you just practice a whole bunch and learn a deck for hours and hours and hours on end, and you get really good at it.
But the deck is so like infinite and like it's like infinite universal. It's like, geez, it's ridiculous how many options it has.
Absolutely.
Well, and now it's even harder to play because you literally get to pick any card you want every single turn. It's a crazy good deck. Getting any card from your deck every single turn is extremely powerful. Like you just have answers basically at every single point. I also don't really want to play it, and I think a lot of people will I don't think it's going to be the most popular deck because I think a lot of people see the skill cap on it and see the tie factor if they don't play it fast enough and whatnot. So I think it'll be played for sure, and I think people need to be prepared for it, but I actually don't think it's going to be quite as popular as some other people think.
Do you think that's going to change day 1 to day 2 at all?
Yeah, maybe. Like, do I think it'll be more played on day 2? Is that what you mean?
Well, either way. I think from what you've said, I would guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's definitely possible. I think that's possible. I do think like all the EU guys will probably play some version of it and have like some spicy techs in it that we haven't really considered or seen so far, to try and like break the mirror or something like that. Yeah, I would probably expect it to be more popular in day 2, at least percentage-wise. Obviously not like absolute numbers.
Absolutely. Cool. So the next deck I want to talk about is, the new archetype coming out that we talked about, previously, and that is Rayquaza. Now, Rayquaza, I think, Mikey kind of mentioned this phrase earlier, but like in a vacuum, it's extremely powerful. Doing 30 times the amount of energy in play, you accelerate with your ability. You have the Latias, you have max elixirs. There's just like so many ways to get so many energies in play so fast. But I think at least to me, it seems like the deck still has a lot of hype behind it, and a lot of people think it's very good, but I think a lot of the best players don't think it's very good, if that makes any sense. Like, I think a lot of the better players in the game are, not thinking too highly of the deck. So I just kind of want to see if that's, also an assessment you guys would agree with, or what your thoughts are on the deck in general. We can start with Mike on this one.
I don't know. I think a lot of good players think it's good. They just don't want to play it.
Okay.
Because it's extremely linear. It's actually pretty hard to misplay with it. But the power level, I think most people agree on, is pretty high. Okay. And it also has a lot of potential with the discards to kind of just screw you over, like randomly. It's kind of got like a good amount of RNG that way. But I think the deck is good. I think it's a fine play, especially for kind of for people that are less comfortable with, maybe their skill level, or it's their first Worlds and they're nervous and they just kind of want to play a deck that they don't have to think too much. They don't have to worry about tying, and they can kind of just maybe rely on matchups and just the sheer power of the deck. So I don't really want to play it, but I think it's a good play, actually, for a lot of people.
Kian, what are your thoughts on Rayquaza?
Yeah, I think it's solid. Like what Mike said, like the thought process is not hard to play, and it's you don't tie really with it, but it's fast. It is very linear, but like I think there's 2 ways to play it. I mean, there's other ways to play it. Like I heard of other stuff, but I think for me, like I like playing it with Garbodor to have some sort of control because the deck's linear. And I think the other way to play is like Acrobike, and I was testing some version with Marshadow, the Let Loose one, just to like get it and get treasure for it. But yeah,
Sure.
I think it's a fine deck. Like I would expect it for Worlds. I would think like foreign players, like Japanese players would play it maybe. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If I sit down across from a Japanese player, I'm just going to assume there's like an 85% chance they're going to be playing Rayquaza.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be the most likely faction to bring it.
Sure.
Here's the Trashalanche, and that's Trashalanche. I think Buzzwolf's kind of like Buzzrock's kind of hard if you're playing the straight version. If you're playing Garbodor and they play Blowers, it's close. I don't know, something like that. It depends what version you play, but yeah. I mean, it's a solid deck though. You could beat Zoro Cargo and Buzzrock if you're playing Garbodor or Belts.
I think the biggest advantage, and like the reason that I would want to play Rayquaza at all is just because I think a lot of people are underestimating it, which is also due to just the fact that it's new and we don't know for sure like the best way to play it right now. So somebody who finds the best way to play Rayquaza, and I haven't really seen any versions of Rayquaza that I would really want to play right now, but if I do, I'd be really happy just because I feel like people will probably play against the worst version, think their deck is favored against it, dismiss Rayquaza basically entirely. And then if you just show up with some version that has, I don't know, some tech for whatever the matchup, or just built in a way that outspeeds them, I don't know. And I feel like you just catch a lot of people off guard, especially day one. It's actually something I've thought of. Rayquaza, like a good Rayquaza deck might be one of the only things that I would say, like, play day one, don't play day two. I'm not sure if the metagame will really have time to shift to that much, and it would depend on how well Rayquaza would have to do. But if Rayquaza storms day one, I would not want to play it at all day two.
Okay, interesting. And why would that be? Like, what would prevent you from wanting to play day two if it's really good day one?
I mean, if there's a way that you can just tack 1 or 2 cards into like a Zoroark deck or something to swing the matchup 15%, then
like
you lose.
Sylveon EXs and stuff like that.
Something like that, yeah. I know 2 years ago, I got in with Greninja in 2016. And I still played it day 2, even though I thought it could get countered. I just didn't think it would. I don't know of anybody who really did much to counter Greninja, but I do know Sam Huff switched one of his tech cards in his Yveltal, Vileplume, Ninja Boy, Jolteon deck into a Trevenant EX to one-shot Greninjas. So I think stuff like that could happen, you know.
I played Galvantula that weekend.
Oh my
I teched in Galvantula in my...
Yeah, Galvantula for like Greninja. And so like little techs like that might not have that much impact on like, a specific game, but if you lose 5 percentage points on every game you play, you might lose one more, and you can only really lose one game.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and another example of that, like Mega Ray did pretty good last year, day 1 of Worlds, and I think there was more Sudowoodos like day 2.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I remember that because Mark played Tina promo day 1. My teammate Mark played Tina promo day. He was playing Gardevoir. He played Tina promo day 1, and he played Sudowoodo day 2.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. So we'll move on from Rayquaza. So overall, it seems like something you guys think is like just pretty powerful, but not too sure about if it could be a great play. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, so the next deck I want to talk about is the one that won the last international championships, and that's Zoroark Garbodor. I think a deck that's still really, really strong heading into the World Championships, and I think one of the main reasons for that is that it seems, at least to me, that its matchup against the Zoroark Magcargo deck is pretty, as favorable as like a Zoroark mirror can be, right? It seems like all these Zoroark mirrors are like, so grindy and can go either way most of the time anyway, but it does seem like Garbodor, Trash Lynch does maintain a slight edge against the deck that plays so many item disruption cards. But I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts on Zoroark Garbodor for Worlds? Whoever wants to jump in.
I think the deck is really good. I agree. It kind of has like one of the most even matchup spreads of the top decks, and I do agree it's slightly favored against Zoroark Magcargo. As long as you play Oranguru and basic Psychic Energy. Let's preface it with that. If you're still playing like Unit Energy and no Oranguru, you're gonna probably lose to Zoroark Magcargo. But if you're playing basic Energy and Oranguru, then Trashalanche I think does give you a pretty significant edge. My biggest thing with it, I don't think it's favored versus Buzzrock. You really don't have a good way to deal with Lycanroc unless you just dump a bunch of items for some reason. So that's kind of my biggest thing with it. Yeah. Oh, I do think that is going to be the most popular deck at Worlds because it's a Zoroark deck and it's a little bit easier to play than a lot easier to play than Zoroark Magcargo. And people are a little bit more familiar with the deck, so I think that'll be the most popular Zoroark choice for sure.
Alex, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the draw to a deck like this would probably be, to me, that Garbodor hasn't been like a huge factor in the metagame recently. I mean, it won NAIC, sure, but not as much as it was a year ago, say. So people aren't really like as used to playing around Trash Lynch, maybe. And so I think you could catch people off guard, and I think people also, something like Zoroark Garb would just destroy any like cute decks, any of like the rogue or like fun decks, the high roll decks. I feel like all those decks are going to be built not with keeping like Trash Lynch in mind. So I think this definitely has a lot of potential for some free wins, I think, but I would want to test the like the Zoroark mirrors a lot with this. I feel, I don't know, because I definitely have not, like, I'm just talking about earlier, like, I don't play, like, much Zoroark. I definitely haven't played mirrors with this. But I feel like, would Zoroark Cargo not just be able to, like, if they just use Oranguru twice to cycle in items, don't they just win? And they just attack with Zoroark back and forth a bunch?
You need to thin your deck. If your deck's too big, you can't really...
Yeah, if you, like, just shuffle a bunch of items back in to kind of counteract Trash Lynch, then they can just go in plus Garbotoxin and smack you for 120, and it's like, I hope I drew good cards.
Gotcha.
I don't know. So it's slightly more complex than that, I think.
Yeah, and
also, the game
Zoroark
takes like
can use
forever.
their, yeah, the games do take forever. I played I played 2 games with Rahul in real life like a week or 2 ago, and we played 2 games and it took an hour and a half for 2 games. Because Zorak Garb also has their own Oranguru, so
Right.
they'll just like if you just start using your Oranguru, they can just like go and be like, all right, I'll resource management too, and then kind of just get their stuff back.
Kian, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, like what Mikey said, like the deck's even matchup spread across, very solid deck because it has controlled. It's like last week's rubber. I mean, well-rounded control deck, right? And I do agree that it has the edge in Zoro mirrors because of Trash Lanch. And yeah, it's a safe. I think it's a very safe play, and I do expect it to be like a popular deck day one. Yeah, it's a very good deck though.
Absolutely. So the deck that Mikey mentioned that seems like gives Zorak Garbodor a hard time, and a lot of the Zorak decks in general as well. One that we didn't see do too well at NAIC, a couple in day 2, one in top 16, but none in top 8, and that's Buzzwole Lycanroc. And I think heading into NAIC, I think that was the deck that a lot of people had pegged as the best deck in the format. So I think a lot of people, myself, I was really surprised that no Buzzwole Lycanrocs made top 8 of that tournament. I think there's a lot of factors that went into that. Maybe like some of the people who were the best of the deck decided not to play it. But what are your guys' thoughts on the deck for the World Championships? Does it get better than it was at NAIC? What are your thoughts? We can start with Kian on this one because I know, Kian, you played it at NAIC.
Yeah, I think the deck is still incredible. Like, I think it's just like a high ceiling, and it doesn't tie. I mean, like, it could be Zorak still. Like, I don't know. Like, I've been testing 2 versions, like one with blowers, one with no blowers. I think it's a deck you still should not discount. Like, I don't think, like, I know, like we always said earlier, like, I don't think a lot of the top 16 players played it, other than Pram and Ahmed did well, but he wasn't top 16. But yeah, that was a big factor why he didn't win, because a lot of the top players played Zorak. But like, people should still not discount this deck because it's still like very good and powerful. And yeah, I still think it's like one of the best decks in this current format.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, any thoughts to add?
Yeah, so I played Buzzrock a lot of the year.
Yeah.
And, like looking back on the year, sometimes when we're just kind of like talking about the year, it's like we should just play Buzzrock all year. Like we should have just played it from London all the way on. But definitely from like when I played in Collinsville, I definitely should have just played Buzzrock at every standard tournament for the entire rest of the year. Except NAIC. I do think at NAIC, I think the Garb version is just like, it's pretty heavily favored against the normal Buzzrock, just because they can't one-shot a Buzz when you have the Garb lock in play and the Field Blower, or the Fury Belt. So like they never one-shot that Buzz. You get you like make up any ground you lost in the early game, and then you have him Garb lock and just finish out the game. But like I said before, I think Buzzrock is much worse, which makes Buzzrock a little bit better. And then also with like the Zoroark control deck being so big, you adapt the deck to the metagame a little bit more, and you get rid of the greedy like all babies kind of version they were playing in Madison that was like much better in like the mirror, and you play 2/2 Lycanroc, and you play 2/2 Octillery to up your consistency as well. I've really liked Buzzrock recently. I think it's definitely my number 1 choice right now.
Awesome. Mike, any thoughts to add for Buzzrock?
So Alex and I, we did a podcast episode last week that I'm still working on getting up, and in it I said that of the top 4 decks, like I would not play Buzzrock, and in a week's time my opinion has very much changed. I did like a matchup, kind of like a big matchup chart, and kind of like filled everything in and calculated out like expected win rates, and Buzzrock was like by far the best like on paper. And so I've kind of been playing it a little bit because I haven't played it that much this year. I'm playing it in the Team Win-In tournament just to kind of force myself to get some games with it. So I think it's really good. I think Lycanroc is like super incredible right now. I agree with Alex going back to, I think I have 2/2 Lycanroc, 2/1 Octillery. I could be convinced to go 2/2. The other thing that I did is I'm going 10 basic fighting, 3 strong, and 1 beast energy because Enhance Hammer is like really, really big in all the Zorak decks. So I think there's just so many times where like you attach to Lycanroc and you want to just play basic fightings on the Lycanroc so you can ensure that you get Claw Slash off. So yeah, I think the deck is really good right now.
All right, and then I want to talk about the other 2 Zoroark decks, the other two big ones I would say, and we can kind of just clump these into one to kind of like just for the sake of speeding the discussion up a little bit. And that's Zoroark Golisopod and Zoroark Lycanroc. We saw both these decks have success at NAIC. Zoroark Lycanroc got top 8. Zoroark Golisopod got top 4. So what are your thoughts on these two Zoroark decks and like slash the what would be the draw to one of these versions over something like Zoroark Control or Zoroark Garbodor? Alex, you can start us off with this one.
So it's actually interesting. This is something I kind of came to the realization a couple days ago. I think also the absence or lessened meta share of Zoroark Golisopod has also helped Buzzrock a little bit. Because now Buzzrock has no real ways to do with the Lycanroc. Or not Buzzrock. Zoroark usually doesn't have a way to do with your Lycanroc. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be a reason that I would want to play something like the Zoroark Golisopod. I'm sure it's way worse than like almost any Zoroark mirror. But if you're expecting a lot of Golisopod, or if you're expecting a lot of Buzzwool, the Golisopod could help you there.
Makes sense.
And I think Lycanroc is probably one of the best cards right now, but I think Zoroark just has better partners.
And Lycanroc also has better partners in Buzzwool.
Yes, exactly.
Mikey, any thoughts on the other two Zoroark variants?
One thing that Alex said, that like if you're playing Zoroark Golisopod to have a better Buzzrock matchup, I think you should just like not play Zoroark then, right? Like, but I do agree that Zoropod is like acceptable to play because of Golisopod, and that's really the only reason it's acceptable. I think if you play a Rangaroo, then you're actually like not too bad in the Zoroark Control matchup and against Zoroark Garbodor. Like we saw Jimmy almost beat Tord.
Yeah.
And if he had no Rangaroo, he was probably fine. So I think Zoropod's fine. I probably wouldn't play it personally over the other Zoroark decks, but I think it's fine. I think Zoroark is just absolutely unplayable. Like you can't beat the Zoroark Control deck because if you ever go Lycanroc, they just go Enhance Hammer, Flare Grunt, Resource Management, and your Lycanroc's just stuck there. So even if you're playing basic fighting, then it doesn't matter. So I think Zoroark's unplayable, but Zoropod's not too bad.
Okay. Kian, do you have anything you want to add about those other two Zoroark decks?
I tested them a lot for Columbus, and I don't know if they beat like Zorocargo and Garb. I mean, I think you need 3 blowers to beat Zorogarb or something. And I haven't really been testing those matchups, but like kind of Tord like showed us like this deck at Columbus beat Zoroark and Zoropod, but they weren't playing a Rangaroo. But I don't think even with those two decks, Zoroark and Pod with a Rangaroo, like I'm not sure if it beats Cargo.
Sure.
I'm not too sure.
No, yeah.
They might be good, but I'm not too sure because I just stopped testing those two variants.
Yeah. All right, next thing on the list here would be to talk about the Malamar decks. And it's kind of interesting because Malamar had solid performances at NAIC. You know, there was 1 in top 16, 2 in top 8. But it seems like discussion for this deck has just basically like fallen off the map to me as far as for Worlds. Like, is it just that there's better decks out there for people to test? I think it's pretty well known that like a lot of the better players in the U.S. at least dislike this deck. I think there's like Adam Hawkins. Obviously got top 4 with him. He's a great UK player. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on the Malamar decks, Malamar Necrozma / Ultra Necrozma Malamar, and where they fit into the World's meta? Kian, you can start us for this one.
Yeah. I think like I guess mainly just the Zoroark fear, right? Mm-hmm. And like. Parallel, I mean, Zorogarb like completely destroys Malamar, right? I don't know if Zorogarb. I think Zorogarb could have Marshadow problems, but I think for sure, like the archetype Zorogarb is really like scaring everyone from playing Malamar. I think Malamar is okay. Like I haven't really tested it. Like maybe with Acrobikes is better, but I haven't been testing it a lot. It could be a good play like day 2 if like just there's no Zoroark. Like you could beat Buzz because people are just playing more Buzz GX in their deck. I don't know how it does versus Rayquaza. But yeah, like I don't have a great grasp of it right now, but I would not probably play it day 1 because I'm really scared of Zoroark.
Yeah, it seems like a deck that just has a hard time with most of the Zoroark decks in general. Alex, do you have anything to add about Malamar?
I think Malamar is just fundamentally really bad. I played it in Madison this year, and like instantly regretted it. You're so weak to Parallel City. And even without Parallel City, you need a very specific set of Pokemon on your bench. Like you have one spot for Lele, like one spot for the Dawn Wings, one spot for maybe an attacker, and then you only have 2 spots for Malamars, you know. If Dawn Wings isn't your attacker, if Dawn Wings is your attacker, maybe you can have 3 Malamars, but if you have to play 2 Leles in that game, you lose. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. When Mikey and I were recording the podcast, my last words to everybody, I was like after we signed off or anything, I was like, all right, guys, just if you do anything, just don't play Malamar. It's actually funny. Kian mentioned Acrobike, and I went and Googled Acrobike Electric to see if anybody had ever played like the old Electric with Acrobikes. I think obviously getting an energy from your discard pile every turn is good, you know. But the way that the decks are built right now and the restrictions of the metagame, I think the deck is just not playable. Now I'm kind of surprised it did so well in NAIC.
Yeah, I was surprised too. He beat Zoroark in top 8. I was like, jeez.
Yeah. Mike, anything to add?
When I was testing for NAIC, I kind of like tested all the big decks, and I similarly to Alex, I just found like all the Malamar decks to just be like in a vacuum in a power level standings, like just a full tier down from Zoroark decks and Buzzwole decks. Like they're just clearly not as good as them. Like maybe kind of as Kian said, it could be a decent meta call, but like their power level is much weaker than those other decks, and I have to imagine it's weaker than Rayquaza as well, especially like Rayquaza Garb. Like what are you gonna do against Rayquaza Garb? They're gonna kill you every turn and lock your abilities. You just kind of need too much. I think the only playable way to play it right now is like Ultra Necrozma with Beast Rings, maybe like 4 Beast Rings even. I think that's the only way that you could play it.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, Mark Lutz played something similar to that at NAIC, and I think he went like 6-2-1, or like he was like just on the edge of getting into day 2. So that's
it's like, well, I think that's where that like exists or kind of belongs. It's 6-3, 6-2-1.
Yeah,
you're fine, and you're gonna have a couple unlucky games. You're gonna have a couple lucky games, but I don't think that you're likely going to be doing much better than that most of the time.
Yeah, I remember Finn. So he played it at Columbus. He went 6-3, and his 3 losses were Zorks. Sounds typical.
Yeah. All right, so we're nearing about an hour here as far as how long this video has been going. There are a few more decks I want to talk about, so what we're going to do for these decks is I'll just have one person talk about it, and then the other 2 just give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and we'll go on from there. And the first one going to be Gardevoir heading into the World Championships. Obviously Rayquaza's gotten a lot of hype. Rayquaza's weak to Fairy. Gardevoir seems good. There's been a decline in Buzzwole Lycanroc, which has been historically, I think, a bad matchup for Gardevoir since they can just put on so much early pressure. So I think our resident Gardevoir expert, Mikey, might have something to say here about Gardevoir. But what are your thoughts, Mike, about Gardevoir for the World Championships?
If anyone's going to play Gardevoir, it should be me, and I'm not going to play it.
Okay.
I really kind of had some high hopes, kind of like as you just said, Chip, like Rayquaza being popular, Zoroark Macargo potentially being a good matchup, but it turns out that they're not bad matchups, but they're not good. Like, especially like a speed Rayquaza deck can usually take like 2 or 3 prizes before you get a Guardy out, and if you don't get 2 Gardevoirs out, like by like turn 4 or 5, you're not going to beat that. Ray Garb can be hard as well if they like kill some stuff and then Toxin NU. So like those matchups are maybe like 55-45. Zoroark Macargo should be favorable also in theory because you have Twilight GX, you have Gallade and whatnot. If Zoroark Macargo plays Professor Kukui, I think it's actually unfavored because they can just kill your Gallade with Reverse Valley Kukui. So we were beating Zoroark Macargo a lot in the early testing with Guardy, and then it kind of, we started playing Zoroark Macargo better and started beating Guardy more. So that matchup is like 50-50-ish. Zoroark Garbodor is like 50-50-ish. And then Buzzwole, as you said, is unfavored. It's not as unfavored as people think, but sure. It's like 40-60. Especially if they start playing more Buzzwole GXs, it actually gets harder. So I don't know. I don't really want to play a deck that has 50-50 or worse matchups and is a stage 2 deck.
Yeah.
If I have 50-50 matchups across the board and I'm setting up every game, sure, that's okay. But like if I'm 50-50 and I'm a stage 2 deck, I don't know, not super keen on that. I do think like Zork, Guardy could be okay. You take like a worse Buzzwole matchup and slightly better matchups everywhere else. So Zork, Guardy could be okay. Even I've been talking a little bit to some people about Zork, Gallade, like just straight Gallade, no Guardy. That actually seems okay as well. You keep you keep like a decent Buzzwole matchup because Gallade's really good against Buzzwole, but still probably won't play that either.
Thumbs up, thumbs down, Kian and Alex. We already saw the thumbs down from Alex. Yeah.
See, all I know is the first couple games of this format that I played with Cena, and he played Gardevoir, and he has not played it or talked about it since. So if Cena and Mikey are not hype on Gardevoir, then nobody should be.
All right. Next one I want to talk about is kind of a rogue deck to come out of Columbus, and that was Yveltal Break. Aaron Tarbell got top 8 with the deck, and there was a couple more in day 2. Dustin Zimmerman, top 16. James Arnold got day 2 as well as one more, I think, somewhere in there. But we'll ask Kian, what are your thoughts on Yveltal/Yveltal Break for the Worlds format?
Yeah, they made a very good deck for that tournament. It was an excellent play. For this format, like, I don't think you could beat Zork that runs Delinquent in the Max Potion and keep spamming them. That's all I found out about the deck, even if you run Shrine. Like, and also a Zorogarb. I run Max Potion and Zorogarb now, but if they know how to go like Toppy Cure and like Max Potion and heal, you can't beat that deck either. I think I don't like the deck that much when I play it. It's not like consistent to me.
Thumbs up, thumbs down from Alex. Okay, thumbs down. All right, and another deck here I wanted to mention. We saw this do pretty well. Another rogue deck at NAIC, and that is the Hoopa Mill deck that Gustavo Wada bubbled at 9th with. There was a couple more in day 2. Mikey's gonna go ahead and give us the thumbs down. But Alex, do you have any thoughts about that deck to share?
I have always been very against the idea of ever playing any decks like that.
Okay.
Waylord, Durant, Hoopa in any form, honestly. I think the best players always have just played around that. If you go back to Memphis and watch Pram versus Yoshi, I think that's a very good example. I also saw Pram beating up on a Hoopa deck at NAIC. If you guys ever need somebody to teach you how to beat stall decks, I think Pram's your guy. Pram's very good at it. But yeah, I think really just the best players will find a way to win, and I think you usually win with those decks just by beating people who don't really know how to play against them. So at Worlds, I think you really don't want to be playing that. That said, I mean, Zoroark, Magcargo, do they really have a lot of ways to attack a Hoopa?
Oranguru solos the entire archetype.
Does it do enough?
They'll just mill you.
Okay, yeah, so that seems terrible. Because almost everything else is playing some ways to attack Hoopa. And if you have any ways to deal damage to it, I think you can win. So I would definitely not play that.
Okay, one more to talk about. We'll actually go back to Alex for this one because you played this one at NAIC, and you talked about this a little bit, so you can just kind of go over it briefly again. But that's Buzzwole Garbodor. Where do you think that sits for the World's format?
Yeah, I think the Buzzwole Garb, as Christopher played in Mexico, and as some people played in NAIC, is pretty dead. I mean, unless you get out 2 Trubbish and 2 Garbodors, and you can have the other one in place. Even then, you're still hoping to end them to 4 and have them not hit the Guzma to take out the second Zoroark usually, or to take out the second Garbodor. But then if they do, you just lose. You just can't let them have. Without enough one-prize attackers or ways to kind of manipulate their attacks or the prize trade, you can't really do enough to come back from an opponent that's getting whatever card they want every turn. But I think the all baby Buzzwole version of the deck might be more interesting. Might actually have a spot in the metagame. I know Kian's been testing it. I haven't actually gotten to play with it.
Yeah, and that's a good transition because that was the next deck we want to talk about, and that's one of these decks where there's a couple decks more that we'll talk about. They got top 16 at the ARG Invitational this past weekend, and one of those is a Buzzwole Garbodor deck with Shrine of Punishments. It's just all one prize attacking Pokemon, no GXs in the deck. And before we started recording, Kian, had mentioned that this is a deck he had kind of been playing a little bit. So Kian, what are your thoughts about this deck, and like what does that deck really look like?
Yeah, I just started testing this deck today. It's basically, I think it got top 16 at ARG. I don't know who played it, but credit to them. But it's basically like 4 Baby Buzz, Oranguru, Sun and Moon. I think I don't remember the whole list. I was not playing it, but I was playing against it.
Sure. And
it was like a bunch of Shrine, couple special charges, Trash Lanch, DNC. It's like basically like a whole one prize deck based around Shrine too. And I think like in my testing, like I think it beats Buzzwole, Buzzrock, and Rayquaza because you're just spamming one prizes with Shrine, and you have Trash Lanch to deal with. As a more even when you have Baby Buzzes, you have Trash Lanch to deal with Buzzwoles. And I was mainly testing. I want to find out how the Zoroark matchup is, because they could just mill you out of energies. But you play 2 special charges and Oranguru, Sun and Moon to play around Delinquent. But I need to test that matchup more. But I do think it could be a solid deck. I just need to test it more to verify if it's playable against Zoroark. And so far, it's like it was decent because of like 2 special charges and stuff.
Yeah. Mikey and Alex, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb up.
Yeah,
somewhere up there.
3/4. 3/4.
To be determined,
Promising.
we'll say.
Yeah, I need a couple more days
new.
to try it.
Yeah, it's a really new deck. I think it's interesting enough to give it for people to give it a shot.
Sure.
And there's a lot of stuff you could do with this. Like, I mean, I'm looking at the original list. Has a Celesteela, has 1 special charge. I mean, Kian already said he was playing with 2. You could switch the choice bands for Fury Bells. You could put in some basic fighting energies. Like, there's a lot of like room to kind of innovate with this deck.
Yeah.
On first glance, I don't know what the right answer is.
Sure.
Yeah.
To be determined. And I think this should probably wrap us up. And that's going to be, I think, Rayquaza, being really the only like main archetype people are talking about coming out of the new set. But there was another new archetype that performed well, got top 16 at the ARG Invitational this weekend, and that is Stakataka Naganadel. So I think this is a deck that a lot of people have kind of, toyed around with here and there, but I think it's kind of gotten brushed to the side in most people's eyes. So we'll start, we'll have Mikey tell us, what are your thoughts on Naganadel Stakataka?
So this is like my 2nd or 3rd like meta discussion, and every time someone asks the question about like cards from Celestial Storm, nobody even mentioned Stakataka. Like we didn't mention it before.
Yeah.
I think it's like really easy to forget about, and I think that's probably for a good reason. I haven't really played too much with it. Some of my friends have. I've talked to Russell a little bit about it. He thinks it's good. I just can't wrap my head around how it beats Rayquaza and Buzzwole consistently. Like I get Duskmane is like really good against Zoroark. I get that. But like I can't figure out in my head how it ever beats Buzzwole or Rayquaza. So
Sure.
So I don't think it's good for that reason, but I guess I could be proven wrong.
Kian and Alex, thumbs up, thumbs down. We got it down.
I've heard it's really weak to parallel. So
Nagadel's a bad card.
yeah, I feel like if I was gonna play a deck that was weak to parallel, I would just play Malamar.
Sure.
Like I don't like Malamar at all, but I think it's just gonna be much more consistent and do pretty close to the same thing.
Yeah, you might not need Naganadel. You might just be able to play Metal Guys. But then I really don't know how you deal with Buzzwole.
Yeah.
I'd rather play Magnezone.
Yeah, that's a deck we haven't really heard much of in a long time, really, since it didn't perform. It was really hyped heading into, I believe it was Collinsville this year. It was the first tournament that Magnezone Duskmane was legal. A lot of hype heading up, and it just totally flopped, and we've like seen basically nothing from the deck since then. But Kian, you talked about that deck a little bit. Do you have any thoughts about that for Worlds?
Yeah, so a local in my area, he qualified at NAIC, luckily, and he likes playing these rogue decks. His name's Eli Ottaviano. He played Magnezone Duskmane at Columbus, and he made day 2 with it. And like I was skeptical of the deck, but then like I was we had a testing thing in NorCal, and I think the deck is solid. It's very like a Bulu deck. It's a high roll deck, but I think Timeless GX is very cool, and I think Timeless GX gives you a chance. Like I think the matchup's fine with his Buzzle because you could Timeless GX and like skip their Beast Ring or Sledgehammer turn. And it's like I was like testing something. I was testing something with 4 blowers for Garb. But yeah, I think it's a deck I'm going to keep testing more. I think it's solid, but it's definitely stage 2. You have those weird hands, so you can't control everything.
Sure. Thumbs up, thumbs down, Alex and Mikey.
25%.
25%. Just a straight thumbs down from Alex, though.
I tested a lot of Magnezone before Collinsville, and I thought it was just atrocious.
Cool deal. All right, well, that, I think, covers just about everything I wanted to talk about. We can go around. If anyone has any other decks that they want to mention real fast, I guess Alex or Mikey, do you have any other decks heading into NAIC heading into Worlds that people should maybe have on their radar?
I've tried a lot of decks. And like none of them are that good compared to the decks that we talked about, especially the first 4 decks that we talked about. So yeah, probably not.
it kind of sucks a little bit. I think there's maybe less room for innovation going into this Worlds than we've had previously.
Yeah.
I think and it's funny, the best decks just have so many good cards. Like every set, they get 2 or 3 like big upgrades. I just don't think there's a whole lot. I think this might be one of the worst Worlds to try to break.
Okay, guys. Sorry, I have to go right now. My ride's here, but it was nice seeing you guys, and thanks, Chip, for running this. And shout out to someone's PC.
Yeah,
sorry, guys.
Thanks, Kian.
My ride's here, and my dog's barking.
Yeah.
You're good, man. Thanks for doing this. Well, cool. That was just in time because we are about to wrap things up. So Kian gave his couple little plugs there at the end. But as we wrap this up, I'm going to give Alex and Mikey both a chance if they want to do any sort of plugs or shout outs, anything like that. Feel free. Guys, the floor is yours. Alex, you can start us off.
Check me out on Twitter at Kazambolt. And if you want to support me, sixprizes.com. Thank you.
Yep. I'll ditto 6 prizes. Check out the podcast. Hopefully I'll have our episode up sometime this week going into Worlds. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for watching. All of the links to all these guys' stuff, Someone's PC and 6 Prizes, as well as all 3 of their Twitters, will be in the description. Definitely go drop them a follow over there. And thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks again, guys, for coming on. And looking forward to seeing everyone at Worlds. It's going to be a good time. So thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, take care.